Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys the absolute best cards from the upcoming expansion, some things to look out for. Normally these videos are relatively accurate. I have seen some of my last ones and the accuracy is in, 70% range. It's pretty good, but I want to mention that this time was a little bit different because, well, we actually played with the cards. If you have seen the stream these last few nights, we have been playing the Rastakhan's Rumble through the Fireside Gathering, and yes, it's a fairly limited way to play the game, but nevertheless, we get some interesting insights on these cards, and I've applied this to all the cards that we have seen and give you guys best 2 class cards of each class and the best 2 neutrals to watch out for. All of these cards are pretty good, but some classes are certainly getting much more than others in the upcoming expansion. To start off with Druid, my first pick on Druid is War Druid Loti. The flexible forms, you can get a Poisonous, a Taunt, a Rusher, a Spell Damage. Basically, whatever you want to do with the card works very well with the fact that Druids don't have particularly good 3-drops. So it's just a natural fit in most Druid decks. I don't think it'll carry any kind of Druid, but who knows, maybe it will. The second Druid card is Predatory Instincts. Now, this is a bit of a surprise, and I want to mention that after the War Druid Loti card, the other Druid cards are generally really bad. The whole attack things with your hero dynamic that is introduced for like the Loa and the theme for Druid in the upcoming expansion is overall total garbage. It might work. You're going to see some people, create highlights out of these cards, but there's no real viability here. Don't get suckered into the hype. These cards are not going to be very good. Any kind of attack with your face thing only works in games where you're already winning, you're already in the late game, and you have a hell of a lot of health. You know what else works in Druid under those circumstances? Everything. Yeah, just play Malagos, just play Togwaggle. Everything else is better than that. It's basically like, oh hey, I can remove the board and maybe do some face damage. Yeah, there's some cool looking combos, but in terms of actual power levels, it doesn't compete with the old stuff. With that said, Predatory Instincts, if that deck would ever work, is actually going to be a key component because the Loa is a beast, and Predatory Instincts reaches out to, taunt Druid lists because of the big bad spider that you know so well. It reaches out to just, pushing a really high health taunt on turn 5. If all these other decks are going to work, Predatory Instincts is going to be pretty good, and Predatory Instincts is probably better than you think. Selective card draw is better than you think, but really it's not even a 5-star card in my opinion. For Hunter, number 1 is Zul'jin. So I took a look at all the different spells and how they might work in kind of like a spell hunter format, and I have to say they're going to work pretty damn well. Zul'jin is just an incredible power level card to a point where I would give this the best card of the expansion award. I think Zul'jin is just incredibly strong. You're talking about, any kind of trap, any kind of beast or minion summon card. Everything like that is super good. Yes, you might have like a stray kill command, but, those type of cards are not as common as the others, and the overall effect is always going to be extremely positive. The card is just really good. I first said that I think the card competes too much with Deathstalker Rexxar, the other hero card that we previously have. I think if you played a Spell Hunter, you would include both cards because they are both independent win conditions. I think it is that good. Master's Call, but all the other Hunter cards, I think, drop down a considerable tier. Master's Call is pretty good. There's this whole, beast archetype with, small rushing things. It's not bad. I just think it won't compete with the existing zoo/odd even type of decks. Master's Call is probably the best card in that list. Nevertheless, picking up specific beasts from your deck fuels that type of deck in the number of cards that you can draw, and Hunter needs that card draw. And in more combo-related decks, picking out specific beasts from your deck can be very valuable. So Master's Call is pretty good. Pyromaniac is the best mage card in my opinion. This is an opinion that was certainly taken from playing the game. The mage deck was pretty good, and Pyromaniac was one of the scariest cards in that deck. It's a 3-cost 3/4, so it's very good stats. It can be played in just about any mage deck, and there's a lot of times where you use your hero power to kill something. So if you just play this on a later turn where you just use your hero power, it cycles. If you play it on turn 3, it's an extremely powerful 3-drop with an ongoing threat. If you're playing hero power mage, this is the first card you're putting in your deck. Pyromaniac is what makes all the other crap work. Yes, some of the other cards might be played, it might be good, might be too slow. We'll see about those other cards, but Pyromaniac is just an extremely high power level card. Second best mage card in my mind, Blast Wave. Yes, I had to put it here. I don't think it's quite as powerful as the other, and again, most of the other mage cards, although pretty good, take a step down from Pyromaniac. Blast Wave is really cool. Blast Wave can be the board clear that you need, a bit of a light board clear, but in those games where you're up against a control deck, you often can convert all of your crappy minions plus some spell damage into mage spells, and it's surprisingly good. A lot of the mage mirrors that I played in the Rastakhan Fireside were won, well, either by the Death Knight card, but you already know that's a really good card, but the secondary win condition was honestly just getting a really sick Blast Wave and getting unpredictable spells that your opponent suddenly didn't know to play around. Paladin is getting insanely powerful cards, but they're generally control themed. Timeout, I think, is the best Paladin card coming out. I thought this card was pretty good, but to give you guys an example, so I played against Hot Form, and he's done very well. He got second place in, I think it's the third BlizzCon championship. He's a good player, right? He just didn't want to play against me when I had Timeout in my deck. That's how good it is. Timeout is ridiculous. It feels so unfair. And do you know what's good in Hearthstone? Unfair shit. And this is about as unfair as it gets. This is proactive ice block, but Paladins have pretty reasonable combos out there. You're not talking about having this in a zoo deck. You play this in control decks and you basically secure your win condition, or you heal for an absolute insane amount. And, the reason it's so strong is Paladins also have huge, powerful board clears. So, it's not like you're giving your opponent a chance to play something, because in many situations, when you play Timeout and your opponent already has a really big board, you're skipping their turn, because if they're actually building the board, Paladins have those huge board clears, they might actually be losing themselves their game by playing more on the turn that you give them. So Timeout really does what the card is called. It times out the game completely. It is gain a turn, basically, for 3. That's insane. And the second best Paladin card, I think, is Shirvala. I didn't think it would be top 2, but after playing it in the Fireside, I do think it is top 2 material. I think the main core that puts it, because there's a lot of good Paladin cards coming up, the main thing that puts it over the top is its synergy with Countess Ashmore. You can create a deck where you guarantee Shirvala through 2 different draws, through drawing the card itself, or through drawing it with Ashmore, or even pandying it, or even putting it back into your deck. There's a lot of really cool mechanics, and I think the card is on a power level high enough that it's actually worth building that deck around it, plus some serious combo potential is coming up with this card at its core once again. For Priest, Mass Hysteria is a very good card. The only way where this card falls short is if people start playing a lot of the spirits. Mass Hysteria is not good when there are minions on the board without attack or with extremely low attack. In general, that is not the case, but we are getting a bunch of spirits. But spoiler alert, there's nearly no spirits that are making my top cards list. So I think the card will work out very well. If nobody is playing spirits, this card should act as a very powerful board clear for a class that capitalizes a lot on very powerful board clears. So that's going to help Priest a ton. Seance is my second pick for Priest.
Seance. Seance. Sea ants. Sea ants. Sea ants.
Seance.
What?
Seance.
Oh. Sea ants.
Seance.
Seance? Screw that.
I think Seance is incredibly flexible in the way that it can be used to create new combos even. It also has amazing synergy with a lot of other aspects. But if you look at some of the best priest decks right now, you would just kind of put Seance in them. Even priest decks that are as innocent as just control priest, having, like a second Lich King or a second huge guy, it's just worth it. And having that flexibility to pick whatever you want, if your opponent even plays a really good card that you want, it's deceptively good. Most of the other priest cards, I feel that the themes with the Loas and the spirits, I think it is a little weak. It's not bad, but I just think it's a little weak, and priest doesn't have that core to carry it into viability. For Rogue is getting absolute garbage. But that's fine because Odd Rogue's like one of the best decks. Raiding Party, I think, is the best Rogue card that we're getting. Two pirates and maybe a weapon. That's really good. That might see a fit in like a Kingsbane Rogue, even perhaps, maybe even Wild. Drawing weapons is just a very powerful aspect, and some pirates are worth drawing as well. Nothing too crazy, just a solid card. Second pick, Cannon Barrage. This is probably a huge surprise for you guys. Just keep in mind that there are some real combos of this card. If you use like spell discounts, you can get the 3 mana, so you could have a huge pirate burst plus cannon barrage. Any kind of burst damage in these classes that are very proactive and aggressive like Rogue is typically kind of premium. I played just some garbage ass, pirate deck in the Fireside, and it was not uncommon to get like 4 or 5 hits off cannon barrage. You have to keep in mind, it does the 3 damage no matter what. So if your opponent has nothing in play and you have a single pirate, it's going to do 6 damage to his face. That's like, not very good, but it's not hopeless. If you're playing an aggro deck, that's a decent finisher. If you have 2 pirates, that's 9 damage to his face for 6 mana. That's pretty good. Cannon Barrage is going to surprise a lot of you guys, but I have to say I think most of the other Rogue cards are going to significantly disappoint most of you guys, so get ready for some cannon fire. For Shaman, we have Kragwa. I think the Shaman Loa plus Spirit does actually work. Getting all of the spells you just played is obviously completely insane. So I think this card is completely insane. One of the best cards in the set. It relies on, Shaman having the tools to survive the early game, having the spells to worth duplicating. So it's not a card we're going to see all the time. But this is one of those cards that anytime there are new cards coming out, you go back, you revisit it, and it's just on that tier of cards. It's just like on the highest tier. Then Spirit of the Frog. This is the only spirit on my list. I think Spirit of the Frog is actually pretty good. Getting a considerable amount of card draw, potentially over 2 separate turns, is no small deal. The card draw potential from this card, the consistency, the ability to close out the game in situations where you otherwise wouldn't be able to, it's all pretty exciting. I think this is a particularly powerful card, but once again has similar weaknesses to Kragwa, so we'll have to see just how much that's getting seen, but nevertheless, very high power cards. For Warlock, I think the best Warlock card is Reckless Dire Troll. Once again, you might be surprised on this one, but you will be blown away by just how much of a difference a few extra stats matter when you're playing a Zoo deck. And Zoo Warlock's not a bad deck right now, and it's getting a few tools that are actually going to make it a little bit better than it is right now. And I think Reckless Dire Troll is at the top of that list. A 2/6 taunt is ridiculous. If you're playing, the 2-drop free Keleseth lists, bumping this up to a 3-cost 3/7 is totally mental. It has huge stopping power. It's like an instant I win the early game. And when Zoo does that, it's pretty hard to stop. So very strong card. High Priestess Jeklik is also very good. Rania and I played a game where we both had this. I might highlight that in the video to come even. It just goes off. Like, at some point, your whole hand is High Priestess. There's some weaknesses to the card because it's a low-tempo play when you're actually playing the card. It's a 4-mana 3/4 taunt. That's not that good, right? But it's much, much better than discarding a card. It's much better than having to tap for a card. So the fact that it multiplies is hilarious and very strong. For Warrior, I think the best Warrior card coming out, this is going to require a drum roll because this is a huge surprise, Dragon Roar. I think Dragon Roar is the best Warrior card coming out. I had a suspicion that it's better to play Dragon Roar than any single dragon in any Warrior deck, and that suspicion was quickly confirmed upon playing the card in the Fireside. Basically, There's one very small case where you play this and you get 2 early game dragons. Very small. Most of the time, you're either going to get 1 small dragon and 1 big dragon, which collectively is about the same as putting any choice dragon in your deck. But if you get 2 big dragons, particularly dragons from other classes, it gets really insane. So much so that you won't even believe the games you're going to have off of this card. I think this card is good enough to see play in warrior decks that are not dragon warriors. I think it's possibly even that good. Dragons are good. What can I say? And with that in mind, I think the Lancer is very good. It's a 3-cost 3/2, but just the execute effect plus a body. The combo is extremely strong. The fact that it's odd is extremely strong because Odd Warrior has been one of the best counters to most of the odd and even decks that people have played in the last few months. So, without a doubt, extremely high power level. For the neutrals, this is where we're gonna have the big surprise. I think the best neutral card coming out, it's not like the huge rushing minions. It's not the 9 mana cost, whatever. I think it's the Druid Trickster. I even had to look at the card's name because this is not a name that I can remember. It's a 3-cost 3/4, so the stats are very solid. And I feel like the effect is just so good in so many decks. I feel like when you're playing an aggressive deck, this is just a very good card because if you're playing against another aggressive deck, well, no big deal. If you're playing against a mid-range or like a control deck, you're typically gaining late game. If you're gaining late game in an aggro deck, it's going to give you that last push to win the game. So I think it's very important. While if you're playing against a control deck and you give them like a random 1-drop or 2-drop, it's not going to matter because you're already going to have the board. So your opponent having like one of these cards, it's not going to make any difference. So there's very few cases where this card is bad. It's generally if you're playing like a control or a combo deck. But even then, if you give your opponent part of your combo, it's useless to them. So it's just surprisingly good. It doesn't fit in every deck, but it fits in more decks than you would think. And it's just a very solid card. Just love it, really. Second on the list is Mojo Master Zihi. I played the card, but the card in the Fireside is only part of one deck. It's part of the Surrender Priest. And the Surrender Priest is a pretty weak deck overall, I feel. Again, I mentioned that Priest cards are generally pretty weak. But yeah, it doesn't highlight this card. This card in that deck didn't seem particularly strong, but I do feel like Ladder will be very different. I feel like this card in Ladder will just shut out a lot of combo decks, and it'll shut out a lot of control decks. If you're playing this in a fast or mid-range-ish deck, being able to push your opponent back down some mana crystals can be an extremely powerful effect. This is a card that is just useful to have. If you think you'll like playing with this card, I think it is maybe one of the safer crafts of the set because anytime anyone is ever playing a combo deck, you can probably just put this in your deck to counter them. So it's just one of those hard counter cards that's not going to go away ever. Hope you guys enjoyed my review. I'd love to hear what you think, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.